The perfect wedding. Interrupted. The autumn sun cast golden rays through the crystal windows of Ocean View Manor, where 200 of the city's elite had gathered for what society magazines called the wedding of the century. White orchids and roses adorned every surface, their sweet fragrance mixing with the soft melodies of a string quartet. At the altar stood Dylan Cross, 32, CEO of Cross Technologies, his dark hair perfectly styled and his tailored black tuxedo fitting his athletic frame like armor. Beside him, Victoria Sterling looked radiant in her designer gown worth more than most people's homes. Her platinum blonde hair was swept into an elegant updo, diamond earrings catching the light as she smiled at their distinguished guests. The couple represented everything high society valued: wealth, status, and power united in matrimony. "Dearly beloved," began Father Martinez, his voice echoing through the ornate chapel, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Dylan and Victoria in holy matrimony." Dylan's jaw was tight, his green eyes focused somewhere beyond the fey crowd. Despite the picture-perfect scene, something felt hollow inside him. He'd built an empire from nothing, commanded boardrooms with ease, but standing here felt like playing a role he wasn't meant for. Victoria squeezed his hand, her perfectly manicured nails pressing into his palm. She'd waited 3 years for this moment, orchestrating every detail to ensure their wedding would be remembered as the social event of the decade. "If anyone has any reason why these two should not be wed," Father Martinez continued the traditional words, "speak now or forever, hold your peace." The chapel fell silent, except for the soft whisper of expensive silk and the distant sound of waves crashing against the cliffs below. Victoria's smile widened, triumph gleaming in her blue eyes. Then the massive oak doors burst open with a thunderous crash. The desperate mother, every head turned as a woman stumbled into the chapel, her brown hair wild from running, mascara streaked down her pale cheeks. She wore a simple black dress, wrinkled and clearly out of place among the designer gowns surrounding her. Her worn sneakers squeaked against the marble floor as she ran down the aisle, gasping for breath. "Dylan!" she called out, her voice cracking with desperation. "Please, I need you!" The guests erupted in shocked whispers. Cameras flashed as society photographers captured every moment of the disruption. Victoria's face went white, then flushed, red with rage. "Security!" she hissed. But Dylan held up his hand, his eyes locked on the woman who had just shattered his wedding. It was Zoe Bennett. 7 years had passed since he'd last seen her face, but Dylan would recognize those warm brown eyes anywhere. They had once looked at him with love, laughter, and trust. Now they held only terror and desperation. "Zoe," he breathed, stepping away from Victoria despite her clinging grip. "What are you doing here?" Zoe reached the altar, ignoring the hundreds of staring faces, the whispered conversations, and Victoria's venomous glare. She fell to her knees before Dylan, tears streaming down her face. "It's Emma," she sobbed. "She's dying, Dylan. The doctor said she needs a bone marrow transplant, and you're the only match. Please, I know you hate me, but she's innocent. She's just 6 years old." The chapel fell deadly silent. Dylan felt the world tilt beneath his feet. "Emma?" he repeated, his voice barely audible. "Who is Emma?" Zoe looked up at him, her heart breaking all over again. "She's our daughter, Dylan. She's yours." Tuck, the revelation that changes everything. Victoria let out a shriek of rage. "You lying witch! How dare you come here and try to destroy my wedding with your pathetic lies?" But Dylan wasn't listening to Victoria. He was staring at Zoe. Memories, flooding back like a dam, had burst in his mind. 7 years ago, they had been inseparable. Zoe had been a graphic designer at his company, brilliant and creative, with a laugh that could light up any room. They had planned a future together, until everything fell apart in one terrible night. "Dylan, don't listen to her!" Victoria grabbed his arm. She's obviously disturbed. Security will remove her immediately. Wait, Dylan said firmly, his CEO voice cutting through the chaos. He knelt down to Zoe's level, his eyes searching her. Ace, you said Emma is 6 years old? Zoe nodded, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. The screen showed a little girl with Dylan's distinctive green eyes and his stubborn chin, lying pale and still in a hospital bed surrounded by machines. She has leukemia, Zoe whispered. The doctors at St. Catherine's Hospital said her only chance is a bone marrow transplant from a family member. I tested, but I'm not compatible. You're her father, Dylan. You're her only hope. Dylan's breath caught in his throat as he studied the photo. The resemblance was unmistakable. This little girl had his eyes, his nose, even the same determined expression he saw in childhood photos of himself. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. 7 years, Zoe. Why keep this from me? Fresh tears spilled down Zoe's cheeks. Because you believed I cheated on you. You threw me out of your life without giving me a chance to explain. I was pregnant and alone, and you made it clear you never wanted to see me again. The memory hit Dylan like a physical blow. The photos, the evidence, the crushing betrayal he'd felt. But looking at Zoe now, seeing the anguish in her eyes as she fought for their daughter's life, doubt crept into his mind. The choice that defines a man Victoria was screaming now, her composure completely shattered. Dylan, you can't possibly believe this gold-digging liar. It's our wedding day. I've planned this for years. But Dylan was already moving. He stood up, his decision made with the same decisive clarity that had built his business empire. Father Martinez, he said, his voice carrying across the stunned chapel. I need to cancel this ceremony. What? Victoria shrieked. Dylan Cross, you cannot humiliate me like this. Everyone is here, the reception, the photographers. Dylan turned to face her, and Victoria stepped back at the cold determination in his eyes. A child is dying, Victoria. A little girl who might be my daughter. That matters more than your party. He looked out at the sea of shocked faces. Business, associates, society friends, family members who had traveled from around the world. His decision would have consequences, professional and personal relationships that might never recover. I'm sorry for the disruption, Dylan announced to the crowd. The wedding is postponed indefinitely. Please enjoy the reception. Victoria grabbed his arm one last time. If you leave with her, don't expect me to take you back. This is your choice, Dylan. Choose wisely. Dylan looked at Victoria, then at Zoe, who was still kneeling on the marble floor, her entire world hanging in the balance. The choice wasn't difficult at all. I already have, he said simply. Racing against time, Dylan helped Zoe to her feet, his expensive suit jacket draped around her trembling shoulders. The guests parted like the Red Sea as they walked back down the aisle together, whispers and camera flashes following their every step. Outside the chapel, Dylan's driver was waiting with the Bentley. Dylan helped Zoe into the back seat, then turned to James, his longtime chauffeur. St. Catherine's Hospital, Dylan said urgently, and break every speed limit getting there. As the car pulled away from Ocean View Manor, leaving behind the wreckage of his wedding and his former life, Dylan found himself studying Zoe's profile. 7 years had changed her. She was thinner, with worry lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Her hands, once soft from her artistic work, showed calluses and cuts from harder labor. Tell me about her, Dylan said quietly as they raced through the city streets. Tell me about Emma. Zoe's face softened for the first time since she'd burst through those chapel doors. She's stubborn like you, she said with a watery smile. Brilliant, too. She reads everything she can get her hands on and asks a million questions. She loves to draw, just like I do, and she has your laugh, Dylan. When she's happy, she throws her whole head back and laughs like the world is the most wonderful place. Dylan's throat tightened. How long has she been sick? 6 months. It started with fatigue, then bruising. The doctors ran test after test before they finally diagnosed her. The treatments have been so hard on her, but she never complains. She just asks when she can go back to school and see her friends. The weight of 7 lost years settled on Dylan's shoulders. Birthdays, first days of school, bedtime stories, scraped knees, and proud moments. He had missed it all. But as they pulled up to the hospital, only one thing mattered: saving Emma's life. Whatever had happened between him and Zoe 7 years ago, whatever lies had torn them apart, could wait. Right now, a little girl needed her father, and Dylan Cross had never failed when someone truly needed him.